Sit up a bit straight up. Ow, 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 ow. I bumped my knee yesterday trying to do a handstand. And I just bumped it against my desk. That's how we're starting today's video. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Morning Bible. It's wonderful to have you. I am once again nice and sleepy, but I'm awake, and it is before midday, so that's the main thing. We are back once again in Luke chapter 12. We're sort of continuing on from yesterday's reading. Like the last couple of days' readings have sort of flowed together quite nicely, and this one kind of continues that but turns in a slightly new direction. So let's get into it. The little title of this one is "You Must Be Ready." It's Jesus talking. We are Luke chapter 12 from verse 35 onwards. Jesus says, "Stay dressed for action and keep your lamps burning, and be like men who are waiting for their master to come home from the wedding feast, so that they may open the door to him at once when he comes and knocks. Blessed are those servants whom the master finds awake when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will dress himself for service and have them recline at the table, and he will come and serve them. If he comes in the second watch or in the third and finds them awake, blessed are those servants. But know this, that if the master of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have left his house to be broken into. You also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." So, this is a little, this is sort of the first half of the passage, and it's a little metaphor basically, breaking down what it's like expecting Christ to come again. So the Bible tells us that Jesus came down in this instance that we're reading about, but Jesus tells us that he's going to come again. There's going to be another time where he comes, but we can't know when that is. That's sort of, it's not up in the air. God has a plan for it, but we don't know what that plan is. We don't know the date. We don't know when this is going to happen. And so this passage is essentially saying, be ready for it. And it uses a metaphor. So what's the metaphor we've got? It says, "Stay dressed for action and keep your lamps burning. Be like men who are waiting for their master to come home from the wedding feast." So the master in this little parable is Jesus. He's going to be coming home at some point, and he's told us, the servants, his disciples, his followers, to look after the house, so to look after the world, to do good things, to be ready, to stay dressed, keep your lamps burning. Keep the lamps been used a lot as an image for faith, so sort of keeping your faith burning, keeping your faith alive. Stay dressed for action, so keep acting in the world, keep doing things, keep busy. And you don't know when he's going to come back from this wedding feast, but he's going to come back. And so you've got to be ready for when he does. Blessed are those servants whom the master finds awake when he comes. So some of the servants aren't going to be awake. Some of the servants are going to go to bed. They're going to say, "Oh, the master's not here, so I can get away with sort of being lazy. We're not really doing my jobs. We're just going to bed early for the night," or whatever. But if the master comes home and finds that, then they're in trouble. "Truly I say to you, he will dress himself for service and have them recline at the table, and he will come and serve them." And so if he comes home and he finds these servants waiting for him, there's going to be this inversion where the master now starts serving the servants, and all of the servants sit at the table. They recline, so it's got this image of relaxing and peace, and they'll be served, so they'll be brought food and drinks and things like that. The servants will become the guests, essentially, the honoured guests. And if he comes in the second watch or in the third and finds them awake, blessed are those servants. So the second or third watch, there's notes in my Bible about the differences between the Jewish watch and the Roman watch. They're slightly different, but it doesn't really matter which one of the two it is, because it essentially just means late night watches. So if he comes in the middle of the night and finds even the guys at 4 a.m, 3 a.m, are still awake, are still working, are still prepared, then those guys are going to be even more blessed, because they've held through to more difficult times. And so if we look at that in a worldly sense, well, there'll be, then maybe there's a second or third kind of watch equivalent out there in the world of people who are in a harder situation where it's more difficult for them to stick with their faith. And Jesus is going to see that, and he's going to acknowledge that and really bless those people even more. it says, "But know this, that if the master of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have left his house to be broken into. You must also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." So, yeah, this thief image, I'm not entirely sure about what it's saying here, to be honest, because my Bible says that the thief is a metaphor for Christ here. So the thief is another metaphor for Christ coming back for the second coming. But that's a bit confusing because Christ was the master of this story, and then that sentence has both the master and the thief in it. So I don't know. If you've got any ideas on what that particular verse is actually saying, then go for it. Because I think the way I've always had it explained to me is that, Jesus is going to come back at a time we don't know, like a thief breaks into your house at a time you're not expecting. It's like, yeah, but in this sentence, he's already referred to the master, and we know that the master is Jesus in this story, so is the thief also Jesus? And how does that tally? Because the master is guarding against the thief. I'm not quite sure what this metaphor is saying, so if someone does have any ideas, feel free to shoot them my way. So let's go and read the second chunk of this passage, because there's another big chunk to get through, from verse 41. So Peter, one of Jesus' disciples, says, "Lord, are you telling this parable for us or for all?" Are you telling this parable basically to your disciples, to this small group, or are you telling this for everyone? Is it applicable to all the people? The Lord said, "Who then is the faithful and wise manager, whom his master will set over his household, to give them their portion of food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if that servant says to himself, 'My master is delayed in coming,' and begins to beat the male and female servants, and to eat and drink and get drunk, the master of the servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he does not know, and will cut him into pieces and put him with the unfaithful. And that servant who knew his master's will, but did not get ready or act according to his will receive a severe beating. But the one who did not know, and did what deserved a beating, will receive a light beating. Everyone to whom much was given, of him much will be required, and from him to whom they entrusted much, they will demand the more." So there's quite a lot there, but we'll go through it bit by bit. So firstly, Peter's question. He says, "Lord, are you telling this parable for us or for all?" My Bible in the notes says that Jesus doesn't actually answer this question, but I think he does. But we'll get to that at the end. So just stick that question, sort of put a pin in it, put it in the back of your head somewhere. Lord, are you telling this parable for us or for all? Just remember that for later. For now, it starts off, Jesus kicks off saying, "Who then is the faithful and wise manager, whom his servant will set over his household, to give them their portion of food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant, whom his master will find doing so when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions." So there will be a group of servants in the house. There'll be a selection of servants. One of them will be selected to be the manager of the house. And so the manager of the house, it calls it the manager of the house. The manager of the house will be the person who's in charge of all the other servants, who's feeding the servants, who's looking after them. Essentially, they're sort of the servant's manager. So the master of the house just deals with the manager, who then cares for all the servants. This sort of chain of command thing. And so Jesus is saying, if you give that responsibility to one of these servants, and that servant does a good job, then you're going to promote that servant even more, and you're going to make that guy not just manager of the servants, but you're going to make him, in charge of all of your possessions. You're going to sort of welcome him into even more responsibility. You're going to promote him, essentially, because he's proven that he can do a good job. You come home and you see that he's doing good when he wasn't expecting you to be there, so you know he's a good manager, so you know you can promote him. That's the first little bit. And then we get, "But if that servant says to himself, 'My master is delayed in coming,' and begins to beat the male and female servants, and to eat and drink and get drunk, the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, at an hour he does not know, and will cut him into pieces put him with the unfaithful. So you get cut into pieces, quite a big warning, if you misbehave in this role. If you get put as the manager of the house, you see that your master's gone, you go, well, I can get away with getting a bit drunk now, I can get away with beating the other servants, I can just generally get away with being a horrible person because I'm in charge, and no one's here to stop me. Then the master of the house, Jesus, is going to come back at a time when you're not ready for it, when you're not expecting it, and you're going to get caught out in that, and you're going to get properly punished for that. But the punishments is where we see a degree of mercy coming from Jesus, which is really cool. So if you're the manager of the house and you get all these instructions and yet you beat the servants and you do these horrible things, then you're getting cut into pieces and put with the unfaithful. Like, big punishment, big punishment. No one wants to get cut into pieces. But there is a step down from that. It says, and the servant who knew his master's will but did not get ready or act according to his will will receive a severe beating. So this is still bad. The servant knew what the master wanted, but he was just lazy, just didn't bother with it. He wasn't like beating the other servants and getting drunk, but he wasn't doing anything either. He was just kind of coasting and taking time off, basically. That servant will get a severe beating because he hasn't fulfilled his master's will, but he hasn't done it as badly as the other guy. And then we get another person who says, but the one who did not know and did what deserved a beating will receive a light beating. So another instance, there's a servant who doesn't know what the master's will is, who doesn't know what the master wants from him. And he does wrong still, and so that wrong still deserves to be punished, but this servant didn't know any better, and so that servant will only receive a light beating. And so what's this passage saying? Well, it's kind of breaking up how so when Peter asks at the start, he says, are you telling this as a parable for us or a parable for all? This is where I think that we're seeing very clearly this is a parable for all. Because we see each of these different servants and their reactions to Jesus, or their reactions to their master's instructions. We see a reflection of humanity's reactions to Jesus. So we have people who are entrusted with responsibility, who take it up, and those people will be promoted. Those are sort of faithful followers, faithful disciples of Jesus. It doesn't mean these people are perfect, far from it, but it means these people are doing Jesus' will, are trying or working hard, are being faithful, are staying true to Jesus. And then we've got the next group of people who they know what God wants and they choose to go the opposite direction. They choose actively to do evil. Those people getting big punishment, big punishment, getting cut into pieces. It may not be a literal cutting into pieces, but it's the image is clear. It's like that. You get punished a lot for knowing what is right and choosing to do what is evil. And then there are the people who know what they're supposed to do but just don't really bother with it. Those people will get a severe beating, so they'll still get punishment. And then you have people who don't know God's will, but who still do wrong, and so there does still need to be justice and punishment, but it won't be as severe because they don't know what they're doing. Jesus, when he dies on the cross, one of the famous things he says is, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. God has patience and forgiveness for people who don't know, who simply don't know his kingdom, don't know his laws, don't know his instructions, which is a comfort to us. And so that's why I think there's sort of a passage for everyone, because these different servant archetypes seem like different versions of people reacting to the gospel. And it gives us a really nice little verse to end on, a really succinct summary that gives us a challenge to everyone, no matter where you are in faith. It says, everyone to whom much was given, of him much will be required. And from him to whom they entrusted much, they will demand the more. So if you get given a lot is expected of you. If you get made, if you prove to be a good servant, you get promoted to the manager of the house, a lot will be expected of you in that role. And if you do well as the manager of the house and you get put in charge of all of the master's possessions, then even more will be expected of you. So it isn't like you sort of fill up your Christian bar And it's like, oh, I'm good enough at this, so therefore I'm 100% good Christian. It's like, no. If you show that you can be trusted with the small things, then you'll be given more. And then if you show you can be trusted with them, you'll be given more. And more is expected of you, in different instances. If you're put in charge of, let's say you're put in charge of like a small group at church, and you do well at that, and you get put in charge of this, and you get put in charge of this, and put in charge of this. And God gives more responsibility to servants who prove that they are good and they are faithful to Him. And so it doesn't stop, basically. You don't hit a ceiling in your faith, is the encouragement, but also a challenge. So if you feel like you're just sort of coasting along and you're at a ceiling, what can you be doing to take on more responsibility, to do more for God, to do more to build up the kingdom? So that's today's passage. It's quite a long one, quite a lot in there, but really, really good. I might tomorrow I might record 2 videos, because I might not be able to record so much at the start of next week because I have essays, but hopefully there'll still be videos for you on Monday and Tuesday, so you shouldn't have to worry about any gap in the content. But yeah, they might be a little bit shorter than normal is the only thing, but that's not a problem for now. I hope you all have a lovely weekend, and I will see you all next week. Bye.